Hi, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and we're back for the second part of looking at a grand tableau. In the episode before this, we gave it an overall scan, looking at our, base cards, our corner cards, our middle cards, and just getting an overall look at the spread as it stands. There's no way for me to do this all in one go, or A, I wouldn't have been able to cover things thoroughly, and B, it just would have been way too long. So in this part, we're going to look a little more into the nitty-gritty of now, once we've overviewed it, scanned everything, kind of gotten an idea of where the direction that this reading was going in. The next step we're going to do is start to break it down. So in terms of the handout, we've looked at the house as a significator. We've kind of looked at where she rests in terms of the spread. We've looked at the yellow boxes, all except for the Essen cards at the bottom, which oftentimes I'll leave to the end. Sometimes give you a message, and sometimes it can represent something that's going to happen in the near future. Generally, I look at it as a sort of last message, sort of like pulling a oracle card when you're doing a tarot reading. The next thing we're going to do in this setup, so here we are on this third bullet point, and we're going to look for the significator. In this case, it is a woman. If it was a man, we would be looking here, and we're going to form a cross with the column that the significator is in and with the row, I'm trying to look at the viewfinder in here, and the row that the significator is in. So the cross would be formed this way and this way for the woman. If it was the man, it would be this way and this way. Okay? So the column that the significator in has to do with present events, so present time frame, and the row that the significator in is sort of a look from past to present. And given what I know of the situation, I know this is fairly recent past. These are recent events, but it's still events that are taking place relatively, and the ones that are really up close, those timing, we're going to get into timing at another time. Right now we're going to kind of look at this generally. I'm not trying not to get ahead of myself, because if we get too much information going, again, you can go through a grand tableau and there are so many things that we can do here, and so I'm really trying to be careful to step through here logically. So by the end of the series, you're going to get a really good, we're going to hit on timing, we're going to hit on following the house trails, we're going to look at houses more, including following the house trails. We're going to look at some of the cards that are considered directional, such as what direction is the rider looking in, when you're looking at across, the things that are above and behind it, the mice cards, which direction it's facing. There are certain cards like that that have directional meanings if you choose to use those. There are also timing that's related to each of the cards. So we're going to look at all that kind of stuff as we go along, but right now we're kind of looking at the nuts, the base core of what we would look at. We've already done the scan, and now we're going to look at the core of the different ways that we would look at a grand tableau before really digging deeper. So in this particular reading, the woman is a significator, and so when we look at her present row, we get the sense of what the four here kind of tell us that in this case, because it is actually quite connected up to her. So we have the woman here, which is our significator, and then we have the tower, and then the book, and then the child for something new. And this really relates to what we were talking about in the last part of the video, where there's going to a shift in, and we were looking at this card today, or not today, because this could change depending on the direction we're looking at. Because remember, even though we've looked at a card in one way, in one focus, we could look at that card in another way when we're reading it differently. So we'll say I'm reading for the man, I might read this line very different than I'm going to read this in the context of the woman. So that's something to keep in mind, that in Lenormand the cards are in flux. Don't get locked in. Sometimes it does stay locked in, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So here we have, again, because we know this is the near past and, currently in a slight past, and this is her present, it makes sense that these kind of are coordinating, because this is showing up to be this main focus, and we have her with a shift in her job into a bit more of a corporate, into a bit more of a larger grouping, that she has shifted the way that she is working, and that as we talked about when we looked at the four cards, this is going to require some sense of learning some more things, perhaps going in for some more training, but this is all leading to something new, and we know that is going to be a shift that is going to be stabilizing for her, and is also going to be a positive change in her finances. So between what we saw in the last video and what we're seeing here in her present, again, we have confirmation that this decision that she's made to shift her job into a more working with a group of people, definitely more of a corporate aspect of her job, we know that is going to be a beneficial move for her, what we're seeing in the cards currently. So that's us looking at this line. When we look this way, we already sort of looked through these cards before, but we certainly have, again, the sense of the social groupings, a larger grouping of people, being a positive. So there's a stabilizing effect for her and moving into more of a grouped aspect in her work, and that this is going to be a positive change and transition, both in terms of her work environment and also in terms of her finances. Moving forward, ahead of her, we do see, moving ahead of her, we do see that this is going to present some challenges, which she was quite aware of, being one of the reasons that she was really thinking things through, following her gut and trying to be smart about it, so which we saw when we looked at the corners. So we have that sense of her gut instinct was to go this direction, but she was really trying to be careful and think it through, because she knew it was going to need some more work on her part, and she knew that there were going to be challenges in the shift. Whenever you shift from a more well, in this particular instance, when you shift from a more self-based, a solitary, not working for yourself, but a much more contained within yourself working environment into a group setting, there are going to be challenges with that. Challenges in the way that you have to interact with other people, work with other people, be more accountable with other people. There's going to be challenges to that, some challenges and things that she may have to learn in order to make all of this work out well, as we see it working out. So she was aware that there was going to be challenges that she was going to face. But we do have it moving forward. We have a sense of friendship. We have a sense of loyalty. There are people that are around her that she is comfortable with, that she trusts, and that she's going to need to rely on as she starts to navigate more of the, again, larger office situation, larger job situation. She's going to rely on those people to help her navigate them, and she's going to have them be able to help her. And all of this is going to lead forward to the Lilies card, which is a sense of harmony, because it's also about family and sexuality. But as we talked about, when we are focusing in on a particular tone, which right now we are really looking at stuff to do with work here, we're not going to have all of a sudden sexuality is going to crop. You have to have common sense. There's going to have obstacles, but there's going to meet somebody who is loyal, and they're going to have sex, and it's going to be great. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't that doesn't make sense within the context of how the reading is flowing. So when you have cards like the Lily that have various meanings to them, you need to always go within the context of what it is that you're keying in on in the particular reading, and that will help you focus those meanings down. So again, we do have that sense of positive. We have the positive change here. We have this leading to a positive place, and a place that's harmonious, even though we're aware that there's obstacles, and we're aware that she's got some friends that are going to help her through, that's going to because this is a positive card. The dog card is considered a positive card. The mountains card is considered a negative card, but this positive card is going to lift up or ease the negative connotations of the mountain. So we know there's going to be challenges, but those challenges are going to be eased by people that she trusts within the work environment that's going to help her with this transition. And so then that leads us to the path of things working out harmoniously and in a good way. So again, looking at our lines this way and this way, we definitely get a sense of connection to what we scanned in the first place with our center corners and our first 3 cards. And we've also gotten some further information that she needs to rely on friends. She needs to prepare herself for the challenges. Stick with being clever and smart and thinking things through mentally to make sure, even though she knows this is a good idea and she's following her gut, she needs to be smart about it too, and so that way she can prepare to get through these challenges more easily. So we have that going on as we look through that aspect of it. So then once we've done that, so we've looked at the significator that way, the next thing that I do is start with looking at the 9 card chunks that we have, depending on the questions that the client has. Now remember, you can go so deep with the Grand Tableau. You can look at all different aspects. So generally when I'm doing readings for clients, they've picked between either a general overview like we just did, as well as 1 or 2 major areas to look at. Generally some people will pick work and romance, and we'll just look at those kind of areas, do a little bit of digging deep, and then there's another layer of Grand Tableau that they can request for me that is much more in depth, and that will start to follow houses and all those kinds of things. A lot of the knighting and I do some of the knighting anyways, but we'll go into it in more in depth, because Grand Tableau you can spend hours on, or you can, you don't have to. You can do what we just did in the last one, scan everything, look at your significator row, look around. So the first 9 card that I would look at would be around the significator herself, although we really have covered most of these cards as we were doing, because of where she happens to lie. We've covered most of those cards as we went, but she could be over here. So we've done all the stuff that we've just done, and we haven't touched on her or around her so much as we may have already now. Now, as you can notice, there isn't a 9 cards. She's up at the top here, and so we don't have 9 cards to look at for her. Now, there's a couple things you can do. You can simply read it in a 6-card way. Just read the cards that are butting up against her. I want to say it was Tarot with Tribes. She has a channel here on YouTube, and she does a lot of Lenormand videos, and I'm almost positive it was her, and I will see if I can try to find the exact video. I don't think she playlists out her videos, so it's a little bit harder to go back and find them, but there is a method in which you can mirror cards, and I don't necessarily think you would mirror the essence cards, although that is possible. These seem to kind of be read separately, but you can mirror up depending on how you learn it. There's a couple different ways. So you could mirror these cards up here. So you would, in essence, be moving these cards. You don't have to physically move them, but you would, in essence, be moving those up there and creating a 9 card, or the 3 cards that we had down here, and mirroring those up. So that is a way that you can do it in order to create a 9 card, and these sort of play off of each other. Generally, I have done that before in the past, just to sort of feel how it goes, and sometimes I will, but for the most part, I just take what's there. Right now, I know there are some, need to focus on some unconscious things with her, some things that are below the surface that we want to focus on, and so I would recommend, probably as just starting off, that just work with the cards as they are. So here at the top, we definitely have a sense of financial issues being an impact on her, because we have that right directly in front of her, and so we know that this has been a burden for her. So there has been some financial burdens. That is going to, we have found, is going to be eased up in the decision that she has made. We've already seen that as we've gone along, but that has certainly been an issue for sure. Now, I like this juxtaposition that we have here of sort of the solitary herself and then the corporation and the more, because that's really what the weight of this job opportunity or this shift that she's going to be making, that's sort of the seesaw that was. So we actually see that visual representation. There's a lot of things that are good and positive for her about working on her own and being more independent within the job that she's in versus the corporation. So we almost see the dynamic of the choice that she has right there. We can also look at the tower in terms of taking a step back, and that sort of, she needed to step back from the situation, evaluate it both from her gut and from, I love how these two sort of have mirrored themselves in this particular reading. When we read the corners, we saw that. So we have that sort of, she's needed to step back and make sure she was tuning in on her gut feeling, her intuition feeling, making sure she was tuned in on that, and then also making sure that she was being clever and smart about it and covering all of her, the intellectual ramifications and really thinking things through. So she had that period of kind of stepping back and doing that before she made her decision. And then this is sort of affirming that she did that and that she made a good decision. So I thought that was quite beautiful, that showed up the way that it did. Now, we definitely, moving in the near future, we do have, in connection with her, we have the cloud card. This is tied a little bit into, you can even see it, we have a tie-in with the actual man, which this is, given the situation, I know that this is quite apt of a tie-in. And then we have the clouds here. We have some difficult times, and we have that sense of oppression also, and some double difficult times. This is raised up by the positivity, and this was kind of in her future flow, which we already addressed. And we certainly have this, troubling times have certainly been weighing on her as she's been dealing with all of this. And then there is a connection with some troubling times with a relationship. Okay, so now once we've looked at, in this case, the 6 cards, but it may be the 9 cards around, depending on where, if she had landed here, right, we would have had the 9 cards to go around, and then you could have just looked at your sheet with the 9 card, just as we did. There's a whole video on reading 9 card, and you can read this in that particular way, in the same way that you did that. And you can do the same thing if it does land up at the top or down at the bottom. You just have less to work with. So if you're doing past, present, and future, you're just doing the 2 cards instead of having the 3 card rows here. If you're going across, you're just having, obviously, these 2 to work from instead of the other. You can still look at your corners here, or you can still look at your V's, just as we did here. So you can do all the things that you did. You're just going to be doing it in a smaller setting. The only thing you really can't do is the diamond, because obviously the diamond's not there, but that's sort of taken place if you look at your 6 card. That kind of does it when you go like this and then you go like that. So there's a lot that you can get into whether this does fall off the spread. Now let's say it falls, I'm going to mess things all up. But let's say the significator card falls here. Again, you have we'll get into later videos about mirroring and things like that, but let's say we're going to leave it there. We're not going to reshuffle it. We really don't have much going on in terms of her future, but just in terms of this 9 card, again, we're looking at her past and her present. There's not much, we don't really have anything, and that can tell us something right there. The things aren't set in stone, things are still in big flux. So there's ways that you can actually read that, and you can do some of the same things. You're just really focusing on what are the cards that are directly touching your significator card. So you're going to be putting these lessons from the 6 card video and the 9 card video into play in the Grand Tableau. You're just going to be doing it, you're going to be picking it out of the Grand Tableau instead of laying it separate. Okay, so we've looked at these 6 cards, and again, we can continue to go on, but I need to move things along. So once we've done that, so here we are, read the 9-card spread created around the significator. The next thing you're going to look at are these diagonals. So we're going to, when you locate the significator card or the topic card, because you can do everything we're doing right now for the significator, you can do for individual topics. But right now, we're still looking at the significator. Now, she's up at the top, so we don't have the past conscious, right, or the future conscious. We have underlying issues from the past, and we have underlying issues from the future that we can see in the diagonals. So here's her, and so we look at these diagonals right here coming at her. You think of the diagonal arrows as sort of coming at the significator. So we would move it from the stars and the owls and the cross up into here, and then we would look at the moon and the coffin. So something, some of her dreams had ended, and this has created a sense of oppression that has been weighing down on her, and that's certainly the case. Again, I'm not gonna get into details. Now, if you're doing this for yourself, obviously when you read those things, that's going to snap, oh yeah, that kind of connects with this. If you're talking to a person who's sitting on the other side of the table, you might read it that way and say, okay, well, there was something that was really important to you, something that had to do with your dreams, that got cut off. There's this ending to that, and that's been causing you some oppression, some difficulties, maybe some depression that's been going on. And they might be like, oh yeah, that's such and such and so and so. When you're doing an email reading, you kind of have to just go with it and write those things out and see what's going to connect to the client. And then I always, when I give, especially with the Grand Tableau, in any reading I give, I'm always going to say, you know, there are things that are going to jump out at you as being significant. You know, let me know that if you want to zoom in on something more. So I might get an email back saying, wow, you know, this little line right here was really impactful to me. This such and such happened. You know, is there anything more that I could know about this? Right? And so then I might throw a couple more cards just to round up the reading, so that we can focus on something that maybe really zings out at the client when they're not in person. But if you're doing it for yourself, obviously these sorts of things will make connections to you with what might be coming along the way, or might have an unconscious, because this might have happened in the past, because in my opinion, for this particular reading, this incident has happened already in the past. But that sense of the loss of that particular dream is going to have an impact still moving into her future. And that's important for her to note, so that when she is feeling depression or feeling, you know, weighed down by things, she can say, okay, I need to resolve this issue and sort of be able to set that aside and leave it in the past, because that's still having an impact on my future. Does that make sense? So even for yourself, if you see that and you know you connect, it's in the future, but you see that and you make a connection to something in the past, well, you know that it's still having an influence, because these arrows are about influencing us. These directional arrows that we see on this chart with the blue, these are about influences to us. And so it may be something that happened in the past, but it's still having an influence on you today and moving forward. And so that is one of those things that you'll want to resolve as you're going forward. And so that gives you that idea of something that can be resolved. So that makes sense? So that's what the arrows are for. And so you may have, if, you know, let's say your significator card is here, you may have this coming at her, this coming at her, this coming, just one card coming at her, these cards coming at her. There may be more directions. Because she's up at the top, we have less directions coming at her, but that is a directional thing that you would then look at. I don't think I put Oh yes, I did put knighting on here, so I will touch on the knighting aspect. So the orange arrows reflect cards that knight to the significator and can be read for more information. So, and again, now in this particular case, we have the woman up at the top. And so we find our significator, and again, everything that we're doing with this woman card, we can do for the heart card if we're looking at that. We can do for the child card if we're actually looking at somebody's child or the desire for child, but generally as a new project that's coming underway, we might look there. If we're looking at a specific man, we might look here. If we're looking at work, we're going to look here. But everything that we're doing, we're going to do that. We can do the same thing with the topic cards. So keep that in mind. So for knighting, knighting is like chess. So when you take a chess piece, so let's say our knight is right here. A knight can only move in one way, not one way, moves in one pattern. He can move 2 spaces and over 1. Okay, so 2 spaces over 1, this would be a knight for her. 2 spaces and over 1, that would be a knight for her. 2 spaces down, that would be a knight for her. And 2 spaces down here would be a knight for her. And you can read these in an arc sort of together. So we have an idea of work. We have an idea of romance and work being combined. So this could be a work romance, or this could be also a stable, because the anchor is also about stability. So again, this comes into play in what your focus card is. And so when we're looking at sets of 2, which is what we're always doing, the first card is our focus. So this tells us that we have a romance and it's being modified by this. So it could still be a work romance, or it could be a stable romance. So we have a stable romance, right? And then we have then over here, we have the number 2 card, which is the clover, which is about small luck, good fortune, but it's not big, it's smaller luck. And so we have a stable, we're just going to go with a stable relationship, because I know this particular wouldn't be a work relationship. So again, it depends on how much information you have on the client. But we have a stable relationship, right? That is a good thing. We have a positive thing, but it's not big positive. It's sort of little positive. And it's connected with a particular man. And so the way that these are knighted, that again, even though right now I already know the connection between them is very close and very important just because of proximity. And then when we have it knighting and have her actually knighting to the man, that that also provides more information that this is something really important for us to look at, which is what we would then look at next. I'm moving into looking at different topic cards. I would personally start with this one, because, or even romance. Now see, we have her knighted both to romance and to the man. So those are important aspects that we're going to look at, that we would look at in a reading. I'm not going to go into details about those things because those would be personal information, but we can take so now that we've done the significator in this process, so we've done all the different things that we're going to do today. Again, there's much more things to do, but we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. We're going to step into the more what they would call advanced. Although when you're looking at books, and if you're looking at websites that talk about techniques for the Grand Tableau, the knighting is often also put into an advanced, and we will certainly discuss it more. But it is a process that I do, and then I move on to the next thing, so I wanted to at least add it in there. So the next thing you would do is pick out, I would in this particular reading go to the man and to the Roman heart card, because she's knighted to both of these. I know that that's a situation where the proximity again to her is quite close, and so these are important aspects, and I know that they're important aspects to her. And so what you'll do is you'll start with your man card and do the things that you were doing. You're going to look past, present, and future. You can read your cards this way. You can follow your diamond. like that, or sorry, you follow your diamond however you want to do your diamond. I follow my diamond like this. You can do your corner cards here. And there are also other connectings in terms of going with houses and stuff. We're going to do those in the next episodes. But you can even look, okay, how is this directionally? How are these doing to him? What does he knight to? He knights to her, and then he knights over here to, this could be about secrets, or there could be issues along the ways as that. He knights to the moon, and he knights to mice. So we could look at those two knightings and say that there's something eating away at his dreams that may be causing difficulties in the relationship that they may want to look at. We can't knight him this way because he can't go 2. We can't knight him that way because he can't move 2. So his knighting is going to be 1, 2 over and 1, 2 over. So sometimes you look at those two cards there, right? And then we have our pair down here that we'll look at and read as a pair. Same thing with the heart. Then you can move on the heart and do the same thing here. It depends on what you want to look at, how far you want to look at things, and it depends on the question that the client, if you're reading for somebody else, asks. If they ask you a question about a new endeavor, you would go to the child and do all the things that you were doing. If they were asking me a question about a new enterprise, a new side business that they were going to start, I would go to the moon card. If they are thinking about some travel, and they're going to be doing a lot of traveling, and they wanted some information about that, you could look to the ship card. If they were really struggling with something and they wanted to figure out what is the key thing that they should be knowing to move forward for success, then I would look at the key card. If they found themselves in a position in which they are at a crossroads and having to make a decision, I would look at the paths card and look at the cards that are around the paths card. And so you would walk your way through, and so you can see here we have a 9 card. Here we have a 9 card around the heart. Here we have a 9 card with the anchor at the center. Here we have a 9 card with a choice at the center. Here we have a 9 card with the choice or with a child at the center. And we would walk our way through all these different topics depending on how far in you want to go. If you're reading for a client, then it might be depending on how, what layer of package, how deep, because they can get quite involved and take quite a lot of time. And that's something, if you're a professional reader and you're thinking about adding in, reading for Lenormand, that's something you want to keep in mind, is that Lenormand readings can take quite a lot of time depending on how in-depth you go. And so you may want to offer a lower package where people can just get an overview and a couple main focuses. So what I'll do is an overview that we did all the way through in the first one. I'll look at the significator card, and then they'll generally want to know about, let's say, work and romance, or a decision that they're having to make, and a man that they're having issues with. There'll be like a 2 more in-depth looks that I'll look, and then I'll have another package for more money, because it's going to take me quite a lot more time to really follow everything up and really take a full look at the grand tableau. So that's something just to keep in mind in terms of in case somebody watching this is thinking of doing this, reading this as a professional, because you can get quite deep with Lenormand, and we haven't even gone on following the house trails and all those kinds of things, which we will get to in another video. So you go ahead and do all the things that you're going to do as you're reading these particular cards, and then once you're kind of done, you can look at your essence cards down here at the bottom. Now again, sometimes people read that up at the front when they're doing their scanning, and sometimes I'll take a look at it just to get an idea of this, because especially in this, we have a lot of, her main focus was on this shift in her job, right? But we do have a positive feel towards that, but we do seem to have some warnings that are going down here at the bottom. And so we do have the Sun card here, which is a very positive card. It's a card about success. So we certainly get that feeling that And so I would tend to, again, we read everything sort of in doubles, although you can read it straight across linearly too, but you can start with doubling them up. So we have the sense of success, right? And then we have the whip card, which for me is about repetitiveness. It can be repetitive arguments and things like that, depending on the context. But because we're talking about the focus card being a very successful, very positive card, we can see that this is a sense of repetitive success. This is going to build and build upon successes. Where she's going with this is going to be a good thing. But we do have a warning down here. So we have the snake here, which means that it's not going to be a short and easy path. For me, this is what this is popping out as, the winding sense of the snake, because we know there's obstacles in the future. And so we have this sort of winding path, and then we have the scythe here. It is going to end. It's going to take a little time to everything to work its way out, as we talked about how things are going to be difficult as she makes this transition, but she's going to, with the help of people that she trusts, she's going to move along to harmony. So we have that same sense here, that this is going to be a little bit of a winding path, but it will end. It's going to, even out and smooth out. If we want to look at this even more as a warning, we have the blunt edge of the scythe. That's sort of a kick in the butt that sort of says, okay, pay attention to things, because it's kind of winding, it's kind of convoluted. You need to stay focused, like we had that was talked about with the fox card. We have that intuition and the clever. We need to employ both of those as we go through navigating this situation. And so that can also be used in terms of cutting, or sort of that blunt sort of kick in the butt says, okay, wake up and pay, don't get complacent because you've already made this decision. Don't get complacent. Stay on your game as you wind your way and navigate your way through over the obstacles and through this new situation. So that would be sort of a final message that could be given to yourself or to somebody that you're reading for when you're done. So I don't know if this has been quite as helpful as the others because there is so much involved. But I did want to, before we start to break down with the different more advanced ways of working with the Grand Tableau, I did want to get that initial scan and this initial look in how we would approach a Grand Tableau so that you just have that initial sense of it without going too deep and getting too overwhelming in the first. So if you really do think about a Grand Tableau as being pieces, you can lay this particular spread down, but that doesn't mean you have to look at everything. You can choose just to scan it like we did in the very first Grand Tableau video, and that would be enough. You could choose to lay it down, scan it, and then just look at yourself for major issues around it. You could choose to lay it down and simply flop right into, okay, I'm really looking at some romance issues. I'm going to look straight here. I'm not going to read it as a Grand Tableau. I'm just going to read it as a 9 card. But the benefit of doing that is that when you're reading this 9 card, right? So if we're reading about romance here, we can see how close it is to yourself. We can see how close it is. Let's say the man is way over here. That's going to tell us something there. Even though we may not be doing a full Grand Tableau, we get some more information just due to the proximity of other cards, to maybe, if we're doing this, even though we're focusing on the 9 card, we can kind of see this path that's coming at, the influences in the past and the present that may be coming at. There may be financial issues coming at them, but these especially because they're outside of the 9. So with these 2 cards following through to the heart card may give us some extra information. And that's why I like, even if I'm doing a 9 card on one specific topic, that's why I like the idea of laying the whole thing out and then focusing on my 9 card, but taking into account some things that might really jump out at me as connective. So it just gives me more information. So I hope that has helped. I know that it's a lot of information, and I know that the videos are long. But in the next few videos, what we're now going to be focusing on, the next thing we're going to really do is look at the house system, because that's quite important to Lenormand. You can read like we just did. We just pretty much read the whole entire Grand Tableau without looking at the houses other than the house that she was under, just because that's one of the first things that I do. But you can read the grand tableaus without the houses. That the houses just add an extra layer of meaning. But go ahead and work with it this way for a while. There's nothing saying that you have to jump straight into the houses. But in the next video, we're going to look more specifically at the houses and how they impact the cards, how we can follow trails with the houses, and just generally look at the house system. And then we're going to move through other more detailed areas and more advanced areas in looking at a grand tableau moving forward in this particular series. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below. If there is a specific area of Lenormand that you struggle with that you would like to see a video on, please put it in the comments. I have no problems whipping out a video that might be in response to questions that you might have. And specifically, you might have all this stuff down, but you're stuck on this one particular area. Is just you can't get it. It's just not clicking for you. Put that in the comments below, and I will be happy to address that. Either point you to a video if I already have addressed it, or if not, to do a video on that. The other thing, if you're interested in, and I'm not sure entirely how this would work, but if you are interested in doing, I know there's a way to do live YouTube where we could do a session where a few of us kind of meet up at the same time and can sort of work through Lenormand with some questions and answers, sort of live, just kind of working through a situation. If that's of any interest of you, I can certainly look into how we can do that. So definitely do not hesitate to tell me what are the specific issues that you would like addressed, because then I can sort of tailor as we move along on Lenormand. I can tailor them to the issues that you would like to look at in more depth. So thank you for your patience with this, and I will see you in the next video.